Welcome to Talking All Things Business. I'm Faye Waterman, your host, and my guest today is Lisa Westgate. Lisa is the founder of Freedom Mindset Training and delivers training in areas of mental health, preventative measures, self-care, and neuro-linguistic programming. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thanks so much for having me, Faye.
That's my pleasure. Thank you for your time. Now, Lisa, the show is all about talking about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do, and also the problems that you solve. So let's talk a little bit about your life experiences which got you or led you into what you're doing today. Let's talk about some of the experiences that you've had in life. Now, you suffered from PTSD and you talk about those experiences.
Sure. I think what's important to convey is that, I didn't magically appear in this field at 30 odd. Certainly had a series of circumstances that led up to it. So predominantly it was my career in ambulance. So was in pre-hospital care for nearly 15 years, and around a decade of that was as a paramedic in Victoria.
Right, I was going to say, were you a paramedic? And what was that like for you? What were the experiences? Because a lot of the time you would see things that we don't see. We hear about these traumas and everything like that, but we're not actually on the ground experiencing these things. How do you deal with all the issues that come up with accidents and suicides and everything that you deal with? I'm not sure what I want to say. How did you keep sane?
Well, I guess given that I ended up with mental health issues backing up, I can't really attest to how well to look after yourself. I didn't quite make that. I think for emergency service workers, there's so much training, so many drills, repeated patterns of behaviour, of tasks and repetition of the job, essentially, that honestly, in the moment when it comes time to take action or to make a decision, you're really running on all of that programming and training and experience after a while, that you don't really have what I would call a human response. You have a uniform response.
An automated response in some cases, is it?
Yeah, I guess it's more of a trained response, or what I call an organisational response. So how the organisation wants you to respond to that situation.
And I think you have to have that sort of a system there so that you can actually cope and not take on that emotional can I say baggage?
Oh yeah, definitely baggage. Yeah. I'm still trying to shed a few kilos of emotional baggage.
That emotional.
There is a weight, physical weight to that.
Yeah, and going home at night or home early in the hours of the morning after you've done your shift, how did you just step out of that and go into your normal life as it needed to be, if you did at all?
I think in part what led to me getting unwell is that I had no idea at that time how to do that. I didn't know how to separate what I did from who I was. And part of what often leads to mental health issues is that adoption of role as identity. And that was who I was, whether I was in uniform and at work or not. And so not allowing yourself to switch off and go and do something else is, I believe, what contributed to me getting unwell, is because I didn't have those strategies. Nobody told me.
No one taught
how to. No, it was never discussed.
Yet there was systems and processes and procedures that you must follow or had to follow. There wasn't any other kind of nurturing or going in and sitting down and talking about it before you went home to get rid of that. It was just like you went in, you did it, you came out, you got changed, you went home, and this is sitting on your shoulders. Your mind's not shut off from it, and this is a continual growth. And
day
in,
day out.
Yeah,
and 10 years.
And it just builds up and builds up and builds up until such time that you just come crashing down. What made you become a paramedic in the first place?
Yeah, I reflected on that a few times in my dark moments. Why am I doing this? Why did I do this in the first place? I come from a medical family, so my father's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor, my mum was in the medical field. So there was always sort of an expectation of family that I was going to do medicine, which was rock solid until I got to year 11 and hated chemistry, and that was a prerequisite. So once it was clear that was not for me, I had to come up with an alternative plan. I sort of fell into it, to be honest, but I always knew that I was going to do something that helped other people. That's who I've always been. My mum tells stories about me at primary school, taking the kids to the sick bay after they'd fallen off the monkey bars. It was always me that was go get the teacher and get help. And so I've always had that in me.
You've had that
to be of service and
that nurturing.
Yeah.
That taking care of. Looking after and making sure others are okay, but you didn't do it for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not doing it for yourself, and after 10 years as a paramedic, and in that, with all the things that you've actually seen and the trauma and everything that's built up inside you, something has to break, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was very cumulative. There was certainly a couple of big jobs that I guess had a big impact. But it's also lots of little stuff. Like, it's being confronted with your own mortality every day, to be honest. And I think that's something that military and emergency services experience in a way that most people don't.
Yes.
Is that most people sort of get around life sort of imagining, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it next week. And we have this beautifully naive idea that there's time. And when you're in a role where your perception gets a bit warped and you're around the chronically unwell or the dying or the dead or just in and out of nursing homes, there is this constant reflection of mortality in your world. And I think that can't help but influence how you start perceiving your own existence.
Did you take it for granted for a little while? Was it, you saw it, yeah, I've seen that, I've seen that. Was that something that you did to help you deal with what you were seeing all the time? Or was it that it was just building and building and you were taking it all on board without empathising, without taking it on board?
I think consciously, I probably felt like I was really good at disconnecting, like, well, that's my work and I'm here to, I'm just here to do my job. And I think I convinced myself to a level that I was quite good at disconnecting, and that's okay, that was at work and now I'm home. But really, at the same time, I had this, what I would now call an unresourceful belief that to be good at my job, I had to be empathetic. And empathy being to share in someone else's pain, to share in their feelings. So the problem with empathy, certainly the way I did it, was I would take on the grief or the loss or whatever my patient and their family was going through, and I would take that on as my own because I thought that made me better at my job, because I really felt with them that this was awful. And that is what I collected, and that built up within me over a long period of time. I'm just this, I used to refer to it as sort of like a black tarry mess that sort of sat within me. Yeah, because I didn't have
that's your second brain.
I didn't have a place to
get rid of it.
Yeah, to drop it.
Yeah.
And so I just collected that.
But you weren't taught how to do that either. Now, are the paramedics of these days taught how to, deal with what they have to deal with, but then go away and work on themselves so that they can leave that there and have their life.
Things have certainly changed. So I initially got into the job in 2005. I got to think about that always. It's 2005. And yeah, really. So
you were quite young.
Yeah, I was just on sort of 25, and I'd spent a couple of years in non-emergency transport before that as well. So
you would have seen things in that area as well.
Yeah, we still responded to a lot of like sort of lower acuity jobs as well, or cases. So back then, I remember one incident occurred, and I went to my first ever fatal car crash. So the first head-on with a fatality, and the driver had died and was still sitting in the car. And obviously that's, I think a lot of people in the industry would remember like your first.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a significant event. And about a week later, I went and spoke to the head of what was called a station officer back then. And I said to him, this was in regional Victoria, and I said to him, look, I'm still thinking about that job. I've been to all sorts of stuff since, but it was still, I was literally seeing it. And he sat me down opposite him at his desk in his office, and he said, Lisa, this is the job, and if you can't do it, then maybe you need to start thinking about doing something else, because somebody else is going to call 000 and they need you to be there for them. And that was the conversation when I opened up and said that I was having challenges dealing with it. Things have very much changed since then, fortunately.
Yeah.
That was a very old school type of way of doing it.
And that is the way that person would have dealt with it themselves.
His whole career, absolutely.
Yes. And he knew no difference, so therefore that's what he was saying to you, and that's not how it is. We certainly know a lot better. Yeah.
There's much better ways to deal with that. And of course that completely disincentivized me to ever speak up again about any other issues I was having, because I knew I would be told to shut up and get on with the job.
Suck it up and move on. Suck it up and move on. And this is the whole thing, you don't suck it up and move on. You have to have a conversation about it and talk about it so that you can move on and leave that mind, get it out of your mind so that you've got room for something else.
Yeah.
And, teaching you to go out and do something leisure, something pleasurable so that you can take your mind off that. Go back to work and do what you have to do, because you can't carry those sort of things in your mind. It does make you unwell.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's really what I now communicate to the people that I educate with regards to what I would consider sort of preemptive strategies. So before you even have any mental health issues, is to be, when you're in uniform, whatever that is, we as the community really appreciate, police and ambulance and fire and everybody else to be committed and 100% in uniform. When you're there, you do the role to the best of your ability, and we are grateful. We thank you for that.
Yes.
But at the same time, the flip side of that is when you take that off and you go home, you need to 100% not be that. You need to 100% be a father or a son or a daughter or a sister or a mother or a basketballer or a rock climber or a knitter or whatever else it is you do to make your life enjoyable, and do that with the same intensity that you do your job when you're in uniform. Do those other things out of uniform. And for me, I think that is a key to longevity in those careers, and continued wellness in those careers.
And it is all about, there is a lot of mental issues out in this world today for lots and lots of different reasons.
Absolutely.
And you being and working in the areas that you work in would see this, and you would give them strategies and structure within their own personal life to deal with what they need to deal with. And we all need to deal with certain issues. We can't avoid some things. We have choices in our life, so we can choose to take things on board, We can choose not to take them on board, but there are certain things that we have no choice with. So therefore we need that structure and those strategies to be able to deal with things like, am I not good enough, or nobody cares, or you've just seen a tragedy, you've just seen what you've said, you've seen a car crash and someone's still sitting in the car and they're dead. How do you deal with that? You need people like you who understand and have experienced it to be working with these people, to take them on board and say, I do understand. Because I find a lot of the time that people who say they understand something and have never experienced it, I just get a bit disorientated with that, because you can't say you understand when you've never experienced it. You can't say if you've been fat and then you're thin, and you're talking to someone who's overweight, you can say, yes, I understand it. But if you've never been there, you can't say you understand it. If you've never dealt with death, you can't say. So you have experiences in this life that I have never experienced, thank goodness, and choose not to and don't want to. And I know I've seen my friends, and I've seen them, when they've died, and I viewed them, and that was my choice to do that.
Yeah.
But to take on board those things, it's just you can't, because you'd be depressed and overwhelmed all the time.
Yeah, or worse.
Or
self-medicating or abusing drugs and alcohol to deal with what you're seeing. And there's lots of unresourceful behaviours that people take on to cope because they don't have better strategies.
Yeah, so this is where you come in and you work with these people to create an awareness to start with. Create that awareness of what is actually happening, because they don't really realise it's just happening. So they're dealing with it with drugs, alcohol, medication, self-harm, all those sorts of things. They're dealing with it because that's the only way they know how. But you can step in, have that conversation with them, really understand where they're coming from because you've seen it, and then give them structure and strategies to deal with it, and work through it with them, so that they can actually then say, oh, Lisa. And also there's another thing there. It's, if they don't feel worthy enough, or they're afraid, they don't want to ask the questions because they might look stupid. But it's asking the questions and asking for the help that's really important, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's crucial. It's crucial. Like, I may be the best at what I do, but if nobody comes to me and asks for the help,
you can't help them.
I can't help them. I can't do anything.
So how can you get your message out there? Now, when you're wanting to work with a client, and someone refers them or they connect with you, what's the first thing you do with them?
We talk. There's a lot of talking. Initially, when somebody makes contact, usually it's just via a message or something on social media, or I find people are sometimes hesitant to just ring as a first contact. So there's often a text-based conversation that occurs first, and we sort of check in and say hi, and then I'll line up a phone call. And on that first call, we really just explore each other. So I don't take on every potential client that comes to me. I don't make promises I can't keep. So there's sort of a bilateral qualification process in that they want to make sure that I'm the right person to help them through whatever they need help through, but at the same time I need to make sure that I honestly think that I can, or whether they'd be better off being referred to a psychologist or a social worker or a yoga teacher or some other somebody else in another practitioner field that might be better suited for where they're either what the issue is or where they're at with that issue.
that was my next question. You know, if you feel when you're having that first initial conversation with them, you would get a sense of whether you can work with them or not,
absolutely.
because you get that feel, and that's an intuition. And you could then say, well, okay, I can't really work with you, or I can't help you, but I will connect you with this person or this person, because you don't leave them in the lurch and not get them any help. So you can say, I'll refer you, I'll have a conversation with this person first, then I can refer you, and they can connect with you, and you can have a conversation with them, because I think that they can help you better than I can.
Yeah, and at least at that stage. And sometimes they'll come back, they'll go and do some work with somebody else, and then they'll come back and say, right, now I'm ready to do the bit that you do.
Yes.
So we were speaking earlier about the relationship between mind, body and spirit.
Yes.
And so some people, particularly if they've been through something very traumatic, you know, not everybody is ready to sit on the couch and talk about it.
No, they're not.
And they need another avenue to start accessing that. And so often a body-based therapist can be really good for that. So I do have a network of all sorts of people that I might suggest, you know, you need to contact this person and do some somatic, some body-based work first. And that just sort of starts loosening the layers and unraveling this sort of knot of emotions.
This negative energy that's built up over a long period of time.
Yeah, people usually spend a lot of time keeping things together.
Yes.
You know, I've got to keep it together. And
being strong.
yes, with the intention of functionality, really, is, you know, well, to be a parent or to keep my job. I can't let this thing overwhelm me, so I've just got to keep it together. And so there's often a lot of energy being put into just holding things tightly within them somewhere. And so sometimes that body-based approach can really be the thing to just start to loosen it up and discover that, okay, it's not that scary, it's not going to take over my life, I can actually deal with this. And then sometimes they will come back and say, okay, I'm ready to get into the work that we do. Having said that, I mean, I don't require people to relive their trauma to process it using the modality we use.
You don't need to relive your trauma. You just need to be aware that there's something you need to deal with, and it could have been suppressed for years and years and years. It's something there, so you work with them. Now, what sort of things do you do with them to actually help them along the way once they get that energy that's all knotted up and the energy starts to loosen and they're feeling more comfortable and more confident to ask more questions, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Asking those questions and you actually bringing out the awareness within them to be able to understand, oh, okay, I can change that. That doesn't have to be like that. It can be different. I can have the support of you, Lisa, to change that so that I can move on with my life and be a lot happier or whatever it may be. So what is it that you can do to help a client get to a place in their life that they're productive, they're happy, they don't deal with these negative energies that they've built up in their body, in their life, in their gut a lot of the time, because that's where it sits, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the older things are, the lower they are down. So more recent stuff sort of sits up here, and the very old stuff sort of moves its way down to the gut, which, you know, people are sort of aware of but not aware of. They're just like, oh, I've got anxiety, or I get tummy aches, and I'm like, oh, and then we pinpoint how old is that issue. Oh, well, that was when I was 4. Well, that's why it's sitting in your gut, because it's really old. So in terms of what I do, the levels that I think really people need to go through, there's stages.
Yes.
So I call the starting point, I refer to as broken, because that's how I self-identified. I thought I was broken in the midst of what I felt as though something wrong with me. I'm not put together right. There was a lot of negative self-talk, and I identified myself. I felt broken.
Mm.
And the stage that really comes from just loosening those tethers and going, okay, well, maybe I can do something about this. I call that curious. Okay?
Yeah, I love that.
That's a stage of curiosity. Well, what if it didn't have to be this way? And really, that is my only prerequisite to work with somebody, is that if they're at that stage of curiosity of going, well, what can you do? And how could it be different? And as long as they're asking those sorts of questions and they're open, we can work together, essentially. If they're still in that self-definition of, you know, I'm this and I'm that and I'm that, we need a little bit more work to get them to that curious stage. But I really feel that curiosity is the antidote to a lot.
That's my favorite saying. Curiosity. I'm so curious. That's what I do. Why I do what I do.
Oh, I'm obsessed.
Yeah, and finding out, you know, where people are sitting and how they can move forward, and how you can structure, you know, their day-to-day life. Or you can, as they say, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So when you're working with a client, you can work with them and you give them the strategies. They've got to go away and work with them and have an understanding of them.
It's less so much that. I guess that's more of a traditional life coach to be like, okay, I want you to write down, you know, 3 things in the morning or whatever. Utilising the neuro-linguistic programming, I feel gives me an advantage, and my clients an advantage, in that it really allows us to shortcut a lot of stuff. So working on a very conscious level of behaviours is still a conscious thought. It's like trying to quit sugar or quit smoking or something. It's, you know, it's willpower. Your conscious mind is 10% of your brain. Your subconscious is 90% of your brain.
Absolutely.
So if you're trying to go, no, I'm going to eat healthy, and in your mind, your subconscious, you've got some strong beliefs around what you deserve and how you deserve to be treated, how you deserve to treat yourself. You're going to eat the whole pack of Tim Tams, regardless of what you're trying to do about your eating.
I could do that.
Yeah, that's right. So if you've got a feeling of, you know, I'm not worthy of being skinny or attractive, something has happened in a previous stage of life that has led to some negative beliefs about your self-image and your self-worth, as much as you're like, no, I'm gonna eat the celery, your subconscious will self-sabotage the conscious, because it's 90 on 10. You know, you're pushing it uphill, as they say. So
we won't say what uphill, but you know.
So the beauty of why I adore using NLP and associated techniques with clients is because we work with the subconscious mind.
Yes.
And once you get that aligned with the conscious intention, it is such a quick process. So I've worked with, I don't know, I lost count, hundreds of different clients, and everybody obviously has their own unique experiences, their own unique life that they have lived. However, there are certainly patterns that when you know what to look for, sort of stand out. And so there'll be patterns of speech, there'll be patterns of behaviours, there are patterns of thinking, and patterns of emotional responses. And those are really, that's the space I work in. So that's why I said I don't need to know the details of somebody's trauma. All I need to know is how you feel about that. Because I can't change what happened. I can't change the events in my life as much as I can change the events in somebody else's life. It already happened.
It's in the past, so it's there.
Well, that's right. It's done.
Yeah.
What we can absolutely change, and what ties you to that event in your past, is the emotional connection.
Yes.
So what rules have you made up because of that thing? What have you decided about yourself because of that thing? How do you feel about what your life is like now because of that thing? It's that emotional tether that keeps us attached. And so by changing the meanings, the relationship, the emotions and the decisions that has been created attached to that, you can redefine all of this in the now and let that go, and let those old stories go.
And that's what they are, they're stories. And those stories sometimes, when you reflect back on them, get bigger and bigger.
They become fact.
Yes.
It's truth.
Yes, and I mean, you're looking at the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is the educated mind, so it can either accept or reject.
Yeah,
The subconscious mind only accepts.
that's right.
So anything that goes into the subconscious mind, then it is a truth or whatever. We can go back, generations with our families and things, and there are paradigms or habits that have been developed which come through the generations.
Oh yeah.
When you're born, before you're born, there's things being developed there, and when you're born in your first 7 years of life, and all the things you see your parents do, the language that they use, the way they move, the way they look, the way they cook something or whatever it is, you develop those habits and you get older, and some of those habits may change, some of those habits stick hard, and there it's like you actually keep repeating those old paradigms and getting the same results,
especially if you don't know they're there.
That's right. And so this is where you come in and you actually create an awareness. You look at that journey, you look at those stories, and you bring them to the now, and then they get rid of whatever is preventing them from actually living in the now, living in the present, and being happy and joyful.
And then we move forward.
Yes.
So once you're no longer that person with all those stories and all that stuff from before, you can put all that, we were talking about baggage before, you put those bricks down, and you don't have to carry them around in a little red wagon behind you anymore. Leave them alone and you move on. Then there is my favourite stage, I say that about every stage, but my favourite stage is now you get to redefine yourself.
Yes.
If you are not the patterns of your ancestors, if you are not the behaviours of your parents, if you are not what that teacher in grade 2 told you to put your hand down because give somebody else a chance because,
you're always asking questions.
You're always asking questions and therefore, you're this, that or the other. Now that you've let go of all of that doesn't serve you, now you get to redefine yourself from who you are now with a focus on where do you want to be.
Yes.
And it's that the stage 1 really is that clearing all that stuff that you no longer need. And then we have that opportunity, and I love sitting with a client and talking to them about what do you want your life to look like?
Yes.
Who do you want to be in 5 years' time? And what do you want to have then? And then let's, reverse engineer a strategy to get you there. Who's that person and what do they believe about themselves? It is incredible the insight people have into their future selves if they just ask.
And that is the big hard thing, is asking. Because a lot of the time they don't think, why would I do that? Or people think I'm stupid. Or worrying about conforming. And this is a big thing in society these days, and it is all about conforming to the norm. What's norm? I don't know. But it's, such and such says, why would you do that? Etc. So these are the paradigms, and these are the things they get set in their ways. They come along to you break those paradigms, you allow them to sit in the present, you allow them to look forward into the future. And you give them that opportunity, you don't allow them, you give them that opportunity to see for themselves.
That's exactly right. And it's not about me giving advice or me telling people what to do. I don't have the answers to everything. My fundamental belief is that my client has all the resources and information that they need to get where they need to go. My job is to reconnect them with those resources and make them realise that somebody asked on a Facebook group, explain what you do in like the worst possible way. It was one of those like fun Friday things.
Okay.
And I said, I help you realise to know what you didn't know you already knew, but I did. So
did you get a few questions and comments?
So a few laugh emojis. What I mean by that is
you don't know what you don't know. You don't know.
Often, we're blind to our own resolutions.
Absolutely.
So often, and there'll be, I'm sure we've all had those. I could have done that the whole time moments, and the beauty of being outside is that, sometimes I will see very clearly in my client, I'm like, oh, I need to go here and here. But when somebody tells you to do something, oh, you know what you need to do? You should definitely eat more vegetables, right? And as soon as we receive advice, well-meaning or otherwise, from somebody else, we filter it and we go, is that right for me? And often we'll push back and go, well, you don't know my life, you don't know my budget for vegetables, you don't know anything about me, and we push it back. But if I said to you, okay, well, what do you think, could be one simple thing that you might be able to do to increase your vitamin intake? And you go, I could probably eat more vegetables, right? And I go, well, that sounds like a good idea. And, well, when can you go vegetable shopping? Oh, I could probably do that in, tomorrow. Okay, great. That person is far more likely to eat more vegetables and actually go and do it because they've come up with the idea.
That's right.
It's so much more powerful than being dictated to.
Telling. Yeah, and nobody likes to be told anything.
I hate being told to do this.
No, me too.
Most of us do. Don't tell me. Help me figure it out for myself.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm so grateful that is my role, is to really just extract that from them and then wait for them to go, oh, which is my favourite noise in the world.
The aha moment.
The aha. I have a beautiful client at the moment who says, oh, and then she will burst out laughing, and that's how I know that the penny's dropped. I live for that.
Isn't it beautiful? And don't you feel good inside when you see someone who came from this suppression to this elation of, I can do this?
Oh, absolutely. And really, I mean, that's why I do it, is because I can see people stuck where they are. They come to me and say, my life is miserable. This, here's all the things that are going wrong. And then
that's what they focus on too.
Oh yeah, and of course, what you're looking at is what you're seeing.
Well, my new saying is, be careful what you wish for.
Yes, yes, you might get to have to rest for 5 weeks.
Be careful what you wish for. It's very important.
Absolutely.
Really think about. Really be aware of what you think about, because the universe is listening.
Yeah, and more than that, you are listening. Your mind is listening. There's actually a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, and its job is to prove you right? It's like your biggest cheerleader in your own mind that wants to prove you right all the time and go, good job, you've done it again. So what it does is it will listen to what you're saying. So you might say, I'm thinking about buying a red Volkswagen. And you're thinking, yeah, they're pretty cool. And then, of course, you start noticing, you're driving along in your boring white territory and you go, oh, there's a red Volkswagen. Oh, there's another red Volkswagen. No, I've never seen that. Is it just this suburb that has a lot of red Volkswagens? And that's your reticular activating system changing your focus so that you notice what you want to notice. So all of a sudden it's going, what, like that one? What, like that one? What, like that one? And you go, oh, gee, they're everywhere, right? Or who's walked out of a shoe shop with a new bag of shoes and then you're looking at everybody's shoes, right? Because it changes your focus and it wants you to be right, it wants you to get what you want. And so that's why it is so important, as you said, Faith, to be aware of what you're focusing on, because you will get it.
You will.
So
Definitely
if you focus on all the reasons why something doesn't work, or people are being awful to you, or everybody at work is horrible, or whatever it is, you're going to keep getting evidence to prove that. Whatever you focus on, you'll get.
Now, can you give 3 tips on why, when someone is dealing with something in their life that's not going right for them, what sort of questions do they need to ask themselves, or how do they get in contact, or how do they find someone that can help them? Because they don't really know what's going on, what's going wrong, because they're not aware of it at this stage.
So just look, you can always speak to friends and family. That's a good place to start, and just vocalize. I think the real curse is to just spin things around in your own head. So, Einstein said, and I'm probably incorrectly paraphrasing, but the same thinking that created the problem cannot create the solution.
That's right.
So if you keep your problem spinning around in your head, you're highly unlikely to find a solution on your own. So anytime that you can verbalize it or share it with somebody and say, you know what, this is the problem I'm having, and get a new perspective, that's always going to be beneficial. You may not like the perspective, but it's going to give you a different perspective, and at least it starts you thinking about things differently than when you're spinning around in your own mind. So just speaking to somebody is a good start. Of course, there's the medical avenue of assistance if anybody has any issues around mental health challenges, particularly acute health issues.
Yes.
So, if they're feeling anything like a suicidal ideations or thinking about self-harming, any of those sorts of really acute issues, then the medical route would be my first recommendation, which is go to your GP for a start. You can get some, in Australia, we can get some government-funded sessions with a psychologist. I would say, if you do find yourself in a room with a psychologist and you just don't gel with them, go back to the GP and ask to see somebody else. So we know hugely that the relationship between the client and the therapist massively contributes to the progress of that client.
Absolutely.
So if you don't gel, go try somebody else, and then try somebody else, and then try somebody else until you find somebody that you feel comfortable with, and you can really just get to the heart of the matter. Because sort of sticking with it is just, it's taking time.
It's a waste of time.
Yeah, and you just need to get to the issues. So I often hear people say, oh, I've tried everything and I've been to a psychologist, and I go, great, do you like them? And they go, and I'm like, well, if you don't like them and you don't feel comfortable with them, you're probably not getting the most out of that relationship anyway. So yeah, obviously for any acute situation, you would want to go down that route. If it's something, and often the people that come to me are people that have already done that.
Yes.
So they've tried the psychologist, they've been to the psychiatrist, they've maybe tried some medications, have played with some different meds, that's not for them, they don't like the side effects, it doesn't get the result they want. Or this has just been going on for a really, really long time. I have a client in Brisbane who has been to a psychologist for 7 years.
7
years?
7 years.
And
right?
then we worked together for a couple of months, and she said that she'd made more progress in those few months than she had in 7 years with her psychologist.
There you go.
And look, there's a whole lot of, I don't want to get into an argument. I'm very much a horses for courses. If the psychologist works for you, keep doing that.
Yeah.
If yoga works for you, do that. If drinking celery juice every morning is the thing that works for you, it doesn't work for me, do that. Find
Celery with something else.
You need something else. Whatever it is that works for you, do that. I'm very results focused, and if it's getting you the outcome you want, then go for it. I've got no issue with people taking antidepressants or other types of medication. If that's what's getting you functional and enabling you to live the life you want to live, then do that. It's not an either or for me. I often work with clients that I'm part of a team. So they're already seeing the psychiatrist monthly, they see the psychologist fortnightly, and then we have a conversation on the opposite fortnight.
Yeah.
And the progress that they seem to make through adding me into the mix just really propels them so much further because we're working on that subconscious level. So just as a team effort. So I certainly have no issue with any other modalities of therapists.
And there shouldn't be, because I think everyone has their place within the scheme of things that will get the results that you need.
I think as long as we focus on the client and the outcomes that they're trying to achieve for themselves, then we're okay.
Well, that's the important thing, focusing on the client. How can they get in contact with you, Lisa?
So the easiest way would be to email me.
Right, and what's your email address?
Lisa@lisawestgate.com.
So it's lisa@lisawestgate.com. That's the easiest way.
It's the easiest way. Or you can find me on Facebook. If you just search on Lisa Westgate on Facebook, my personal profile, my business page come up, which is just Lisa Westgate FMT, which is Freedom Mindset Training.
Freedom Mindset Training. Thank you, Lisa. It has been very informative.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
And there's so much more to talk about, so we'll have to do it again. And we've got a retreat coming up soon, so we'll have to come back and talk about why people need to attend that retreat and what the benefits are and what they can get out of it.
I'd love to.
But in the meantime, I'm Faye Waterman, your host of Talking All Things Business. If you would like to be on the show, all you need to do is connect with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, send me a message. Let's organise a conversation to find out how. Until next time, bye for now.